We are just about, yes, now we are.
Okay, very good. I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll take the meeting slightly out of order on the agenda, only as we're awaiting other folks to join. And I'll use our time now doing just a round robin of introductions. And since we're not in a circle in a room, I'll call you out. And Angela, I'll introduce us. And Christian, I see you have joined. Welcome.
Thank you, Helen.
Christian, we were just about to do a very quick round robin of introducing ourselves, so I think that will be perfectly germane for you to hear it as well.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll start. I'll tee everybody up. And Angela, I'd like to hold for you until a little bit later in the agenda so that we can hear a bit more about you. But my name is Helen Conley. I'm serving in the role of the chair of the commission, although this is my last meeting in such capacity. I've been on the commission for about maybe 10 or 11 years. I've served with Roland for a long time, and it's great to see you all, great to meet you. With that, I'll turn it over to Roland.
Hello, my name is Roland Watkins. I've been a member of the commission for about 10 or 12 years now. And I have previously served as chair and vice chair of the commission. Okay.
Very good. And Stefan, I'll turn it to you.
Hi, Stefan Klein. I've been on the commission for about 2 years, but in the mid-90s to the mid-aughts, I was on the commission for about 10 years and served as the vice chair.
Very good. And Wanda, throw it over to you now.
Sure. I'm Wanda Younger, and I am the newest member of the Human Rights Commission. I was appointed on November the 14th, and today is my first official meeting, and I'm very happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. Welcome, Wanda. And Bill, we'll turn it over to you.
And Bill Rice, roughly 2 years on the commission as well, and serve as secretary. So take notes or take minutes during the meetings.
Thank you, Bill. And Gurjeet.
Hi there, this is Gurjeet Chima. I'm the Assistant County Manager for Human Rights and the Director of the Office of Human Rights. Welcome, Wanda and Angela, and I know we have another guest. Thank you.
And the other person whose initials are MG, I'm terribly sorry, I'm not sure who that is. Okay.
I think MG might be meeting guests, so it might not be their actual
That is Carol. She put in the chat that it's Carol, but she's having tech issues.
Very good. Okay, Carol, we'll come back to you later when it works. So let us start the meeting with a hearty thank you to Christian for joining us today as he is in his final scramble on his service as a member of the board and as our liaison, and he's graciously agreed to come and speak with us tonight. I know, Christian, I speak on behalf of everybody on the commission when I tell you what a privilege it was to get to know you and to get to work with you and to have you as our board chair. We're going to miss you greatly. But with that, I'd love to turn it over to you. I think the two topics we'd love to sort of hear about are, any updates you can give to this group on the status of the ordinance, and then two, any updates you might be prepared to give on succession planning and the like.
Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. And it is deeply appreciated anytime anyone expresses appreciation for any positive contribution I may have made with this service. So thank you for that. And thank you for the commission for dealing with what has been a back and forth of liaisons between me and my former colleague, Katie Crystal. We both very much valued the work of the commission. And when we were not serving as chair of the county board, we wanted to make sure that we traded off among us. So you've had a back and forth, but it's not because we don't value the work that you do. It's in fact because we value it a lot. And I'll just say, not to wax entirely philosophically, I'm going to miss having an opportunity to see firsthand the work that you're doing, the discussions that you're having, and the way in which you're proposing to move the county forward to better align our values with practice. So with that as the preamble, I also have an apology because I am dimly lit in the recesses of the Kenmore cafeteria because I am awaiting my daughter, who is going to be doing her first band performance in middle school. So you're not keeping me from it. Don't worry. But I have to rush in as soon as I'm done here. The two things that Helen wanted me to talk about. First, the ordinance update. Where we are with this is really with, as I understand it, two things that are open. One, the substantive issue where you all are advocating for the incorporation of Arlington Public Schools within our ordinance as an area of commission purview. And then the other open area are a number of what I would consider technical definition changes that are going through the legal review process, which to my understanding as of this moment are not yet quite done, but I think are nearing completion. Helen, if you have any updated information on that, please correct me. So then there's also the substantive piece on source of income, which you all surfaced discussed a long time ago, and the board has been long interested in seeing that addition made as well. So that's not controversial. The various definitions and other technical changes that you're seeking to make, I don't think will be controversial. Where we do have the need for more discussion, because right now everyone is not aligned, is with the inclusion of the schools. And thank you to the commission for providing some reference materials that I've been able to review to look at how various places do it. You know, the city of Alexandria largely focused on having the commission perform studies, provide analysis, and therefore provide recommendations to the public schools. There are other ways in which this is approached by other comparator jurisdictions. One of the things that we have here in Arlington is a situation where the public schools is not yet necessarily interested in this kind of change. And so it doesn't mean that they are permanently not interested, but I would certainly think it would be in everyone's best interest that that be a collaborative conversation for if they are to be included, how they're to be included, that our side of the shop understand what the implications would be for their organization, if any. We would understand what the implications would be for our organization, if any. And so, just to be very clear, they are not interested in this work. But I do believe that if you would like to engage in making the case, there is room to figure out what is the conversation that should take place in order to have your request considered deliberately by the stakeholders at public schools. That leaves us with what to do with the ordinance. My recommendation would be, once the work is done with legal review and updating definitions and the like, let's move forward with what we have that we can agree to, and you can take time to work on the other substantive issue in a way in which it makes sense. There is no, while we don't want to review and edit the ordinance every couple of months, there's no reason that we can't do it twice within a year if that's what the circumstances required. So we don't need to feel like you got to wait for one shot to do everything that you might want to do. There's been such agreement on, I think, a significant area, including source of income, that has not been implemented yet. And I think it's time to get that substantive area done. That would be my recommendation, at least. Of course, in about 16 days, you're free to disregard any advice that I have, but that would be my recommendation for right now. As for succession planning, I am devastated, but fully understanding of Helen's desire to remain on the commission, but to make room for the leadership of another. And we have, for those of you who don't know, we've persuaded, cajoled, or otherwise pressured Helen into continuing to provide leadership, because we know that you all respect her leadership, and we do as well. But the time has come for us to grant her relief. So we are in the process of figuring out who the successor is going to be. I have had some conversations with a couple of you about what that might look like. We're not yet at the point, and I'm sorry that we're not yet at the point to announce what the succession plan will be, but know that it will be finalized soon. So by the time you all meet next, you will, hear offline what we're intending, And certainly if I have not talked to you about succession planning and you're interested in talking to me about it, certainly reach out. I do have, a few minutes between now and the time I end to engage in things that are not already scheduled. So I do apologize. I had wanted to have something a little bit more definitive and concrete to share with you on that tonight. Things have just not aligned yet. So your forbearance on that is requested, and otherwise I will stop yapping and open myself up to questions for a few minutes before I do have to hop into a band concert.
Well, Christian, first of all, really, really grateful that you're talking to us when you have much more important things to be doing with your time this evening. So we'll keep our questions brief. I'd love to sort of double click on your recommendation to us around engaging in a process to kind of make the case, as it were, to schools. And if appropriate, I'd love to hear your view on what that might look like. What is the point of engagement? What support, if any, do you think we have from board leadership to do that? How do you see that happening in a successful way?
Yeah, to be frank, one of the things that we as a board, the 5 members of the county board right now, which, as you know, 40% of which will change over magically in a couple of weeks, but the 5 current members haven't really seen an urgent need to do this and see other ways to address what might be the commission's concerns of providing an opportunity to, review data and outcomes as it relates to discriminatory or alleged discriminatory practices in schools. Now, that said, because we haven't seen the sense of urgency, I don't think anyone is categorically opposed to it. However, doing so would require a lot more than just putting some words in our ordinance. It would really mean working together with another, public entity of which we're not entirely familiar with their processes and what it would look like. So there just hasn't been the urgent interest to do so. But we did reach out to the schools to see if they were interested, because obviously if they were, we would work to accommodate that interest. And they weren't. And the superintendent in Arlington is a resident of Alexandria and was formerly a member of the Alexandria Human Rights Commission. I believe he was their chair at one point. And he was, under the impression that their commission was chartered a little bit differently than you have in fact revealed that it is. So, it'll be interesting to, I think, engage him directly in that conversation. And he's familiar with it because we've obviously brought it up to him, and I'm sure he would, not that I can speak for him, but I see no reason why he wouldn't engage you on that conversation as well. And maybe with discussion and a little bit of a back and forth about how you envision it working and him giving it some considered thought, maybe schools would have a different of opinion. I can't represent that they would or have any inclination that they would, but it has not been as thorough a discussion as perhaps you all deserve in order to have this properly considered, especially in light of the fact that our neighboring jurisdiction does have something set up, even though it's not quite exactly the same as what you've proposed.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Let me now open it up to the floor. And you can raise your hand and I can do a round robin, or feel free to come right off mute.
Everyone can be recognized except Roland. I'm kidding. Roland, I'm kidding. I just knew we'd get a laugh out of you.
There he goes. His hands up. Right over to Roland.
Well, I just have to first say that we're definitely going to miss you, Kristen, and I am extremely sad that you're no longer going to be on the board. But I do understand that there comes a point in time when someone says it's about ready for me to begin another chapter. So I wish you all the best in your next chapter. Quick question regarding the transition to the new board members. Now, my understanding is the new board members are going to be sworn in on December 16th.
They will be sworn in tomorrow, December 15th.
but you're going to still stay until December the 30th.
So everybody, you get a peek behind the window of how we operate. The new board members are going to be sworn in, but have no power until January 1st. So their terms do not begin until January 1st at 12 o'clock a.m., a minute after or at the same time that my term expires. So yeah, the swearing in is a ceremonial event. They actually don't become board members until the 1st of January.
So who will be actually voting if you're able to come to some sort of resolution on the succession?
Yes.
Will it be the present county board who will vote on it, or will it be the new county board?
The vote will occur on January 2nd when the board has its organizational meeting. So it will be the new board. But as often happens, things that are in process very much reflect what the outgoing board is doing. So I do not expect that there would be any interest in changing whatever succession plan is put in place.
Good, thanks.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it.
Thank you, Roland. Stefan?
Yeah, I was going to provide good wishes to you as well for your leadership in so many things, including with us. But I wondered if you had any ideas about a different type of succession, which is a sense as to who might be the next liaison to the committee.
I don't know yet, but I will follow up with Helen offline to share with all of you. I just don't know. I know that they've had that discussion and they gracefully allowed me not to be a part of it. So I just don't know the answer, but I will find out for you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Christian while we have him before he goes to the band recital? Okay, well,
right.
Christian, let me just echo what everybody said. Thank you so much for your time this evening and for your service with us. We will certainly miss you, but we wish you all the best.
All right, we'll be back in touch with all of you, but take care. Happy holidays, okay?
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, Christian. I'm sorry to have missed you. I'm just coming back from Carissa's swearing in, so sorry to be joining the meeting late. I'm actually just leaving the parking garage at 2100. Well, backing out of the space anyway.
Well, thank you, Fatima, and welcome. It's good to see you. Okay, and there's Walt as well. Okay, well, very good. Let's move on our agenda. I'll just give a couple of quick updates from the sort of chair perspective, and let me sort of pull the string on succession planning, which is what we were just talking about, and just tell all of you it's been a real privilege and a pleasure for me to get to serve in this role alongside of all of you. I'm not going to be disappearing. I am going to remain on the commission, but as Christian eloquently said, I'm going to be stepping aside and making room for other people to step into a leadership role. And I look forward to continue to support and serve just in a slightly different capacity. I'm afraid I just don't have a whole lot of bandwidth coming into 2024, but very excited to continue to support and see the work that we'll continue to do. Couple of updates. As you guys will recall, last meeting, we approved a letter that Stefan took the pen on. Thank you, Stefan, to go to the internal HR department to Marcy Foster. That went out in November, just after our meeting. Haven't heard a response back on that, but just sort of putting a flag into our record and maybe, Bill, to be reflected in our minutes. To consider in 2024, whether either the chair of the commission or the chair of the EEO committee might want to engage in some follow-up to look at the progress against that letter. Hi, Stephen. Good to see you. So that's sort of point number one by way of an update. Point number two, by way of an update, as you all will recall, in the last meeting, we sort of aligned on our consensus to keep the current meeting cadence on the second Thursday of the month, same time, same frequency, 11 months out of the year. My recommendation here is when the new chair takes the seat in January, that would be the appropriate time to designate which of next year's meetings will be virtual. Remember, there are only 3 virtual meetings, and so you're going to need to figure out which ones those are going to be and get them committed to the calendar. But that's something for the next chair to do, not for me to do. We've said it before, but we'll say it again. Wanda, welcome to the commission. You were appointed in mid-November. We are thrilled that you're taking the seat, and a hearty welcome from all of us. And that's sort of the perfect tee up, I think, to our public comment, because we're going to defer minutes approval until January. I had an issue with the link on the recording, so I wasn't able to put the minutes together, but we'll have that for you before January. So on our public comments, Angela, we'd love to open the floor to you. Angela has expressed an interest in joining our commission, and we didn't quite get to you on the intros before, but we'll turn the floor, Angela, over to you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to join you on this meeting. Just a little bit about myself and my interests. So I recently moved to Arlington about a year ago with my family. I have 2 small children, elementary age. They go to Science Focus. We moved from Kansas City. And while I was in Kansas City, I did a lot of different community volunteer work. And one of the things that I did was sit on the Human Relations Commission for the City of Independence, which is right outside of Kansas City. That experience was very, very valuable to me, very insightful in terms of really understanding the importance of protecting and promoting human rights at the community level. So I, moved here and getting acclimated to the area, but really wanted to express interest in possibly bringing some of that experience, and then obviously learning more about how the commission works here in Arlington. But for me, some of the things that are really important is just ensuring that within our community, it's there's fairness, diversity, respect, and equality, especially when it comes to things like housing, employment, education. So I'm really hoping to hopefully be able to join the commission if you would have me. Like I said, bring some of my experience to the table, and then also do the work that's necessary to ensure that we do have equitable community. So thank you very much for allowing me to join you. And if there's anything further that you need from me, please let me know.
Angela, thank you so much. First of all, welcome to the community. I hope it's been a smooth transition for you over the past year. We are all perfectly aligned in the work that we're doing and the background that you have. And so we look forward for opportunities to continue to work with you and deploy your skill set, because you're right. There's an awful lot of work to do. And so we love to see the energy and the inclination to do it. That's just awesome. I'll give some other folks an opportunity to introduce themselves who've joined a little bit late. So I'll just kind of do a round robin here. Stephen, if you want to give an intro.
Sure. My name is Stephen Krieger. I'm an attorney in Metro DC in Arlington. I've been in the commission for, I think, just about 1 term. So about 4 years now, maybe close to 4 years. Happy to be here, like doing the work, and nice to meet you.
Great. And Walt, we'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. Nice seeing you, Angela. Thank you for coming on board. I've been in the committee for about 4 years, and we do a lot of work, and hopefully you'll be joining us. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Walt. And Fatima?
I'm in the car, sorry, so I'm going to make it really brief. So my name is Fatima Argan. I am involved as an interfaith activist on a number of different levels, on a number of different interfaith nonprofit boards, to work on bringing communities together to address issues such as hate speech involving a number of different demographics. And essentially, the objective is to make people feel like they belong, because that is what I think one of the things that we should be concerned with. I won't go on, but that's for another conversation. And I'm trying to get past this fire truck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fatima. And then lastly, Carol, I know is on the line. She might be having technical issues, but let's give her a minute to see if she's able to come off mute and intro.
Helen, I'm sorry. I know everything's been breaking in and out. I apologize. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Carol. Keep going and we'll let you know if you break up.
Certainly welcome to Wanda. I'm sorry. I heard most of the meeting, but it's been breaking in and out. I am a volunteer travel leader with the Arlington 55+ program, and we had a trip to Delaware today. We were supposed to be back at 6:30, and so we're still on the bus, and the Wi-Fi here is cutting in and out. So I apologize for not being able to see you. And I welcome our visitor, and I'm very excited that you're interested in joining the commission.
Carol, if you can hear us, we've lost you, but we'll come back to you later in the meeting to see if your Wi-Fi is a little
Know
bit
that
better.
I was here, and Helen, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Helen, for your service, and I hope that means you get to spend a little bit more time with your little ones as well.
Thank you, Carol. Appreciate it. Okay, well, with the intros under our belt, can you guys hear me fine? Okay, let's pivot now to the executive director's report. Gurjeet?
Hi all. Sorry, having some grammar issues, so just bear with me. Marcy did receive the letter that you talked about, Helen, so we're looking at ways on how we can partner with the vendor on the AAP as recommended. And I think we have 2 extensions also that are, I think that Anna can share more information about if you guys would like. But other than that, it's just same old, and more work.
Great, thanks, Gurjeet. And let's put a pin in the extensions for the moment. I know on statistical reports, Stefan, you had a couple of questions that you've exchanged some emails with Anna over, and so I'd like to hand it over to you to sort of flesh that out and get an opportunity to ask your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. So I've been looking at the statistical reports with more detail in the last few months. And I mean, I don't know how to approach this, but one of the takeaways is most of the complaints that are filed are dismissed. Many of them are dismissed before they're actually accepted. And then once they're investigated, most of them are found to be not valid or dismissed in some other way. And maybe that's fine. But I kind of wanted to engage in a discussion as to whether to step back for a second as to figure out what's the point of the complaint process. Is if the point of the complaint process is just to give people a platform, and if they're investigated, they're almost assuredly not going to be found to have suffered from discrimination. Maybe we need to tell people that up front. So that was one of the things that I saw with this data. And then to compare it to my tenure from many years ago, when something is dismissed, there's virtually no appeals to us. And I questioned Anna about that, and it turns out that of course they are apprised of their right to appeal. And in my tenure this time, there's been one appeal, and apparently that was true for the prior several years before I rejoined the commission. So that, by way of background, I wondered if you guys wanted to talk a little bit about this month's statistical reports and provide us with kind of an assessment as to whether there's anything different that could be done with this process to make it, I don't know, more meaningful to complainants, starting with, and maybe again, I'm reading this, but of 4 complaints submitted in November, I think only one of them seems to have been accepted, and that seems consistent with the year, with 42 complaints submitted in the fiscal year so far. Only 11 have been accepted. So I guess my specific questions is if you can talk about the process between submission and acceptance on one hand, and then the high number of administrative dismissals on the other hand, and whether we need to do anything different with the process, that the complaint process that we're dealing with. So sorry about that very long prologue, but those were kind of the 2 questions that I had.
So I'm gonna let Anna take that one on. I'm just gonna start out, I think, to answer your first general question, and just to give some perspective. And Stefan, in terms of the purpose of the platform, the purpose of the platform and the process, of course, is to, implement the ordinance, right? To make sure that people have a place to bring their complaints and that we adjudicate them neutrally, promptly, fairly, and thoroughly. As far as meaningful, I think when you see that the reason you don't have too many appeals is because we do a painstaking job in making sure that our decisions are supported. Some of the folks that are on here weren't here in 2018 when I joined, but for those of you that were, you saw probably or should have seen a 180-degree difference in the types of reports you get now versus what you got then. And it's safe and accurate to say it's a vast improvement. So we are very, very thorough in the work that we do. And then we also speak to the parties and make sure they understand. So that I think is also huge. Like the investigators take time out and make sure that they answer questions that both sides have or the complainants have before issuing a decision, which helps them sort of understand, in terms of why something was or wasn't found. I think a lot of times when, as you probably understand, for those folks that, particularly have employment law backgrounds, it's a high bar for complainants, particularly in employment discrimination complaints, but other discrimination areas as well, housing, education, any of those listed. So when they don't have the evidence or anything to support their claim or to rebut a legitimate reason given by a respondent, it's hard to find in their favor. But even then, we try to make sure that they understand everything and the reasoning, so they don't feel like they're just, being told that they obviously they have a certain perception of what happened to them, and so we want to make sure that we hear that. And with that, I'm going to give it over to Anna, who can explain more, I think, about your specific question regarding dismissals and administrative dismissals as well.
Okay, well, Sasha, I think it would be helpful if I just sort of walk through how we get complaints and what a complaint, when something becomes a complaint. Around the end of 2019, we began to transition to a more online system. Before that, we were sort of with a lot of paper files. We didn't really have a robust online system where people can submit complaints, through a web portal, which they can do now. And so when somebody is out there in the community, they fill out a form, they hit submit, it creates a record in our database that we created. And so we have a record now. When that happens, we reach out to that person, give them a call, set up an appointment. We do that within 2 business days of receiving that form, discuss their complaint with them, look at everything they presented. And if it's something that they can make a claim of discrimination, and we spend a lot of time talking to them because people don't know, they know something happened and they know that they're upset about it and they felt discriminated against or they were not treated well, or they're upset, but they're not always able to explain to you, exactly in the correct terminology. So we spend a lot of time, typically those intake calls are 45 minutes or an hour, just going over what happened. We're trying to help them articulate it so that they can let it, really narrow down whether or not this was a claim that we can accept. If it is, we will draft a complaint, send that to them, make sure that it is accurate, what they believe happened to them, and what we can accept under our ordinance. We'll have them sign that complaint. Then we have a complaint. That's when we have a formalized complaint, and that's served to the respondent, and we'll begin an investigation. Sometimes, a lot of times, the folks will submit a form online, and we have a record created. We reach out to them, but they don't have a complaint for a lot of different reasons. Maybe it didn't even happen in Arlington. That's not that uncommon. I go to Arlington, Texas once or twice a month. People just, I don't know why they Google us and we come up and they call us up or they submit a form. That's fine. We'll refer them to the place in Arlington, Texas that can help them. But, you know, maybe it happened 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe it's just not discrimination. It's something else. They have a dispute with their neighbor or something. There's all kinds of things. But those things are not things that we can accept. And so we have to do something now with that record that is created in our system. And so we will identify the most appropriate reason and dismiss it because we can't accept the complaint. So a lot of what you see is those administrative dismissals are those things that where somebody has submitted a form, it's come in, we reach out to them, and it's not something that we can accept as a complaint. And so that's becomes an administrative dismissal. The ones that I think, Stefan, you had asked about, the ones that are failure to cooperate, those are sometimes we have folks who, you know, they're really mad about something, they submit a form, and then we reach out to them, they don't respond. We reach out to them again, they don't respond. We set up an appointment, they don't come. 3 or 4 times we try to make contact with them, they don't respond. We'll dismiss those, and we often say that's a failure to cooperate because they didn't connect with us. We couldn't go any further with it because they never responded to contact attempts. But that's typically before we even have a conversation with them because they put their form in and then that was it. So that's a lot of where those administrative dismissals come, but there is not any effort for us to, you know, we're not looking to try to avoid taking complaints or talk people out of filing complaints, or we actually really try to help people get there if we can, help them figure it out and really articulate what they think happened to them. And if it's covered by the ordinance and we can make a complaint, we will take the complaint and work with them. And we're kind of different than other agencies that are a little larger, I think, is the investigator that starts with you and helps you draft your complaint and formalize that and serves it is the same one that you work with throughout the entire investigative process. So we develop a real rapport typically with our complainants, and we believe that most of the time they feel like they got a fair shake and that they understood at the end why we found in their favor or didn't, or helped them try to conciliate it if we could do that for them, you know, work that out with the respondent if their parties are interested in trying to resolve it. But they feel like at the end, you know, well, maybe I didn't get what I wanted, but I don't feel dismissed and unheard and like nobody paid any attention to me. I think we really try to do that and we take that seriously.
Anna, could you speak a little? I'm sorry, Stefan, go ahead.
I was wondering if it was always the case that it's not really the filing of the complaint until you guys accept the complaint. Has that always been the case with the Human Rights Commission, or is that a relatively new procedure?
That is not new. That has always been the case. The person has to sign the complaint form. They submit an intake form. They put down, check the boxes and say, here's what happened to me and when it happened. But until we have discussed it, because sometimes they may put things in there that are not, not within our jurisdiction or whatever, whatever it may be. But we have always, since I've been with the office, and I've been in the office almost 17 years now, the complaint has to be formalized and signed by the complainant and
that's per the
and assigned a complaint form, a complaint number, and if it's dual file with the EEOC, all that has to be there before we have a formalized complaint that is now ready to be served.
Anna, that formalization, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, that's also that is from the ordinance. The
Yeah, that there's it's
formalized
in the ordinance,
complaint,
the formalized
yeah.
complaint. I'm not sure exactly
You
how
have
it's
to-
phrased, but it's in there.
So we
We used to
require the
have them
signature.
notarized. Now we don't require the complaint to come in for a notarized signature any longer, but they've always been formalized. Helen, did you have a question?
I do. And Stefan, it looks like you might be frozen. Did you have more, or do you want me to go with my question, Stefan?
Go with your question. Thank you.
Okay. Anna, could you speak a little bit about your process in having the debrief with the complainant after the disposition? Is there a script you're following? And can you talk to us about how you describe the appeal process and what they're told in that context?
Yeah, I don't think we have a script per se, because like I said, we have really kind of developed a rapport with that person. They know us by that point. We've talked to them a lot. We've interviewed them a lot. We've done rebuttal with them and all of that. But we basically say, we've reached the end of the investigation. Here's what you can expect. And we do that once we have completed the investigation. We draft with the report is written, it's been reviewed, everything is approved. And we just basically say, hey, here's what to expect. We're going to send you a full report. It's going to lay everything out. You'll see everything that we looked at, the full analysis, how, what the law says, how we arrived at the conclusion. Take a look at that, read it. If you have questions, you feel free to ask us. And then we explain the cover letter lays out what their right to appeal is, what that means, what the review means, how they do that. And essentially all they have to do is just tell us. They say, I want to appeal it, or they send an email, I want to appeal it. There's nothing super formal that they have to do. They just need to let us know. And they also are told, if it's an employment complaint, that they can also ask the EEOC for a substantial weight review. If they choose to do that, they can do both if they want to do that. And we tell them that's their right, and they have every right to do it, and it's up to them if they want to do that.
And you all wouldn't opine one way or the other about the prospective success of any appeal or otherwise
Absolutely
kind of
not.
Dissuade in any way, right?
Absolutely not. We are not trying to dissuade anybody from doing anything. They're told, we just want to make sure they feel, I don't think it feels very good for them to have gone through this process and then just, here's the report in the mail, there you go. We try to provide a customer service of a sense to folks, and to just, explain here it's coming. You're going to be able to read everything, but this is what you can expect, and you do have the right to appeal it if you want to, and all you have to do is let us know that. We do not try to dissuade people. They have a right to that if they want to do it.
Thank you. Any further questions, Stefan or others, for Anna or Gurjeet?
I have one other question, which is, it seems like there's almost no findings of cause, going back at least the last couple of years, but I wondered if the last 4 or 5 years there were any more that you could remind us of. And is that consistent with the other commissions around here, that there are almost no findings of cause?
I can't speak to what other commissions. I don't know. I guess we could ask what they have. It's pretty typical. We do typically, if we think we're getting to the point where we have a cause finding, often we try to conciliate those things and resolve it. And if the parties are interested in doing that, that's typically what happens. But it's not impossible that we have them. We do have them on occasion. We haven't had any recently, I don't think, but that may change. And we believe it could change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stefan, if it helps, I mean, this is not inconsistent with when I was an attorney at the Smithsonian overseeing their EO investigations and decisions. It was very seldom that we had findings, violations, just because people don't present enough information to show it. So this has been in terms of at least since May 2018, since I've been here. I think even before Anna, if I'm recalling correctly from the paper records we had, it wasn't like the office had findings before. And then I mean, if we had it, of course, then we have it. There's no attempt to like, oh, we don't want findings, nothing like that. If the evidence shows there's a violation or a finding, we absolutely would come forth with that. Sometimes though, I think respondents, the other problem is a lot of the complainants are pro se, they don't have counsel, respondents often do. So they benefit from that. And what they submit is more information, their analysis is there. And then sometimes the respondents that are larger, if they have counsel, they'll see sort of the writing on the wall and they'll try to settle, which is another reason why you may not have a finding, because they're wise enough to say, okay, look, this is not looking good. Go ahead and, we should consider settlement. And then that wouldn't come as a finding, it would be a settlement, if that helps.
It does, except it seems like in recent years, there haven't been a lot of settlements either. At least looking back towards the end of 2022, the fiscal year 22, there were, I think, only 2 or 3 for the whole year and no cause findings. So there aren't like a ton of them.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on, sometimes folks just, even when it's in their best interest, want to settle, they don't want to, right? So, and then if they don't have the evidence to support their claim, then you end up with you don't have a finding or a settlement.
Well, I'm sorry that I've taken up so much time with this. I can't tell whether any of our colleagues are concerned about this, but I will continue to watch the statistics. So thank you for your time on this.
I'm sorry if I can just say something. I was the chief of EEO for a couple of years also in the government, and it is pretty consistent. It is very common and best practice, honestly, that if you first going to dismiss a complaint if procedurally all the information isn't there, if it doesn't meet the legal requirements for timeliness and things like that. And in reality, very few cases get found in favor of the defendant because there are a lot of things that go into workplace situations, and it's not that discrimination doesn't exist, but a lot of times people have grievances, or they have issues with supervisors, which or coworkers or what have you, that result in an EEO complaint. But when cases are investigated, very few cases are found to be an actual case of discrimination. They may be found to be something else, but seldom is there an actual case of discrimination. And usually settlement isn't even discussed unless there's some thought that the person has really been aggrieved and it's in the agency's best interest to settle the complaint.
Thanks, Carol.
I don't know if that helps.
Let me turn it over to Wanda, whose hand is up as number 1, and then from Wanda, we'll go to Fatima as number 2.
Sure. Just a question in regards to if someone appealed the findings, what's the next step? Does the Human Rights Commission receive that appeal, and what's the process in terms of reviewing and making a decision?
Gurjeet, do you want to tackle that answer?
Sure. Sure. So Wanda, basically the commission would take a look, would have access to, we previously used to have the commission would come into the office if they wanted to look at the paper file. Now that everything's electronic, we send out the file to everyone. They have an opportunity to review it, and we schedule the appeal. The complainant has, I think, if I'm recalling correctly, 10 or 15 minutes to come. You can extend it one time to share information on how there was the standard is abuse of discretion, not de novo. So, there are a few things under abuse of discretion that will qualify as that. And then we would explain all that to them. The letter says it all, and we explain it. And then I think sometimes actually in the appeal, you explain it again. And then they say their spiel, and then you guys, the commission goes into closed session, usually discuss what they think about what the complainant said in terms of comparison to what our decision said. And then you vote and decide whether or not there was an abuse of discretion. If there is, the investigation is sent back for additional investigation or whatever is warranted based on the basis for the abuse of discretion. And if not, then the decision is upheld and no discretion, and there's no abuse found, if that's helpful.
And one other thing on process, Wanda, in terms of the actual sort of run of show of the appeal process itself, there is a presentation by the appellant. And then there's a Q&A session that we will do where we have a very kind of orderly approach where all of the commissioners are given an opportunity to question the person. And then they're released for sort of our executive session deliberations. So there is certainly an opportunity for the complainant to be heard.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Fatima, over to you.
Okay, and my mic is on. So I'm trying to figure out where on the agenda we are. Apologies, I had to come in a few minutes late. Are we on the extensions or let's see?
We haven't gotten to extensions yet. We're talking about the statistical reports and some of the questions that came up from them.
Yeah, I thought so. So somewhere in there. But I just wanted to bring up a topic before we close tonight. It's something that came up, and I guess I can probably. Yes, I can probably address those in the members' reports. Okay, never mind. Go on. I just wanted to make sure I had that time before we close this evening because
absolutely. I'll open it up in members' reports. Let's just close out the statistical report discussion, and then we'll get there. But thank you for flagging it. I won't forget. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Anna or Gurjeet or anything else for Stefan who raised the issue? Okay, very good. Let's talk about the extensions. And Anna, if you could just give us a quick blurb on each.
Yes, just one second, please. Okay, so we have one where we had a little trouble connecting with the complainant to complete the rebuttal, but that person has re-engaged with us, so we are going to complete the rebuttal. We think we can wrap that up. It's the last sort of step just to make sure we've done everything in that investigation, and probably we'll have that one done by the end of January. And then there's a second one where the parties were attempting to reach a resolution, come to an agreement on their dispute, but that did not ultimately work out. So we're going to complete the investigation and make a determination in that one. And also we'll have that one done early January.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions on the two cases to be subject to the extension? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve both extensions. I see Stefan made the motion. Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion's carried. They're both approved for the extension.
Okay, thank you.
Members' reports, and let's start with you, Fatima, because you had one, and then I'll open it up and we'll do a round robin.
Okay, so I'll just go through it really quickly. I'm going to give you a quick context about what the issue is about. A little over a month ago, there was a peaceful protest supporting Palestinians in Rockville, and another group of counter-protesters came up and tried to drown them out for about 2 hours' time. They said extremely vile and hateful things, and the police were called, and the police basically didn't do very much. And so I, in my capacity as an executive board member of a nonprofit organization called Jamaat, which an acronym which stands for Jews, Muslims, and Allies Acting Together, decided that we were going to take it up with the Montgomery County Council. We subsequently had a conversation with the liaison to the police chief, and we last night, in fact, had a call with the Montgomery County Committee Against Hate and Violence, and it was very well attended. It was a public meeting, unfortunately not recorded. But what came out of that was that they are going to take this incident very seriously, and a couple of other groups have signed on and are very concerned about it as well. including the Montgomery County Human Rights Commission. And when I heard that, I thought, well, I didn't know if our Human Rights Commission also might be interested in the issue, because a lot of these, there are other, other hate speech related incidents going on in the area. And I'm sure there are a lot, there are quite a few in Arlington, but this one was particularly bad. And it's out on social media too. I didn't have a chance to ask for it to be put on the agenda to talk about it as a topic on its own. Otherwise, I would have brought, maybe the video to show you to what I'm talking about. But I just wanted to throw it out there, let you know that this was, this is what we were doing. And if it's something that we might want to sign on to, I'm not expecting you to make a decision at this point, just sort of giving you an awareness report, just so that, depending upon which way this goes, we may or, this group, the commission may or may not want to be a party to supporting that initiative.
Can you speak a little bit more about what the initiative itself is? What is the Montgomery County Human Rights Commission signing up to? What is there a petition of sorts? Can you give us more intel on that?
At this point, it's not clear. That's why I'm not able to provide any more detail, but they are taking it very seriously. And the Montgomery County Human Rights Commission is going to be looking into it more as well. So there is I'll tell you, there were 3 things that we talked about last night, doing 3 letters, and again, these were rather vague, so I don't have more information to share with you. Otherwise, I would. I'd go into more detail. A letter to the community, a letter to the county council, and a letter to the Kate Chance, who is she is the I forget what her title is. I think she's a committee against hate and violence in Montgomery County. So I don't have anything further to share with you right now. There's no action required right now. It's just really sort of an awareness thing. That's all at this point.
Well, Fatima, thank you for raising this. I think my recommendation is this should be something of continued dialogue at our commission level. I certainly agree with you that there are points of intersection between our ordinance and the scope of the work that we're doing and hate crimes, hate speech, discrimination on the basis of religion or other protected characteristics that we should be talking about. So my recommendation would be if you could maybe marshal what's happening in a bit more detail over in Montgomery County, and maybe we can stick this on the agenda in January or February. Absolutely. So that we can figure out if there is action to be taken and whether it makes sense and whether it's jurisdictionally prudent for us to do so.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll update you as I get more information, but that's all I have for now. Thank you for considering.
Very good. Thank you, Fatima. Before we move off Fatima's report, does anybody have any comments, questions, reactions to that? Okay, very good. Carol, apologies for calling on you out of turn, but just did want to touch base with you only because you have so many activities outside of our meetings to see if you had anything to report. I know you were going to be meeting with some of the members of the board to talk about the schools issue that we heard from Christian on earlier, and that I think you've already attended the Human Rights Commission broader meeting, I think in October. Do you have any reports out on that?
Yeah, just a few, and unfortunately, the Virginia Human Rights Committee decided to disband. They gave $675 that was left in the Treasury to the American Civil Liberties Union, and I know that was a decision that was not made lightly. And I think, unfortunately, things started unraveling a little bit during pandemic and people weren't able to participate at the level that they wanted to. So a decision was made to disband that. And I had been serving as a liaison to that and the treasurer as many of you know. So I did want to report that out since it was mentioned. I did have a good meeting actually the day I was leaving for Africa. I met with Tanya about the school board issued, and I had a very long conversation, not the school board, yeah, about the school board inclusion. And I also had a very long conversation with Roland and subsequently with Takis on the issue. So to kind of fill you in, the sense that I got from Tanya was that there are some processes in place that was alluded to by Christian in his conversation also. There are some processes in place that give some protections, it is felt, to the educators in the school, that they have processes in place. But the one thing that I heard from both Tanya and from Takis was that there's a concern about the fact that the members are unionized. So we now have people in the county, so this applies to the county as well as the school board, even though the issue that we raised was covering the schools, that because of unionization and the collective bargaining agreements that are in place, changes we make to the ordinance would of necessity require that we go back to the table to bargain on those issues. So whether or not that's a reason to not go forward with what our plans were, I'm not sure. I know Roland had some thoughts on that because we spoke for, gosh, about an hour after I had the meeting. And what Tanya had suggested was that we meet with the superintendent, which I think is valid, to talk about some of these concerns, and also to meet with the Human Rights Commission in Alexandria to see how these things work. So it sounds like subsequent to the meeting that I had with Tanya and the conversation I had with Takis, that there was also further discussion that Christian was involved with. So I'm going to pause for a minute to see if anybody has any questions on that before I move on to something else.
Yeah, could we pause on that, Carol, and open that up for
Yeah.
discussion? And then can you pin whatever your last item is, and we'll double back to it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
of course.
I want to just give a few reactions on that point, Carol. I had heard that before, the issue that including schools would somehow be tantamount to a modification of a CBA. I'm not persuaded personally, right? I'll defer to others who are more informed on this call than I am. I get that argument as it relates to inclusion of the Arlington County workforce within the scope of our ordinance. I do not see that argument as it relates to inclusion of schools within the scope of our workforce. I just don't see how the two track together, right? But Carol, I wonder, what do you see as our next step process here? I mean, we heard it from Christian, and Roland, same question to you, because it sounds like you were part of these discussions as well. But it sounds like there's a bit of a lobbying effort that needs to happen, right, in order to reach a little bit more consensus with schools to persuade around the importance and urgency of including them within the purview of our ordinance. Carol and Roland, did you all talk about you meeting with the superintendent, like with Tanya or Takis, or what are your thoughts on that process?
Roland, I'll let you go first, and then I'm happy to share my thoughts.
Well, there had been discussions with school officials that occurred pretty much under the auspices of the education task force that we had, because we did that Whitney chaired, because we did have not only students on there, but we had parents, and we also had discussions pretty much with school officials. So they've had some involvement pretty much with the Human Rights Commission. I agree with Helen. I'm not persuaded at all that simply because you have a CBA, that means that you can't give anyone a statutory right of something simply because they have this. It might interfere with what is the contractual situation that exists between the school board and the union. Anyone who has dealt with public sector employees knows that there are situations in which collective bargaining agreements do have an EEO process. I dealt with it in my capacity in the federal government. And I don't think that one could let the collective bargaining agreement be the instrument that governs the situation, or say to an employee, you can't avail yourself of a statutory right simply because you have this process set up in a collective bargaining agreement. Usually in those collective bargaining agreements, the employee is pretty much given the choice as to whether or not they want to go through the CBA and the process set up in the CBA, or whether or not they want to go through the statutory process, which was the situation pretty much when I was working at the agency and in charge of a lot of that stuff. I think that we should be having some discussions regarding the jurisdiction of the schools, because I'm not exactly persuaded that we have all of the stakeholders pretty much involved in the whole thing, because when you're looking at that, that is jurisdiction, you're looking at not only the school board, but you're looking at, the teachers, you're looking at pretty much the citizens and everything else. So I think there has to be a little bit more discussion and getting more pretty much of the stakeholders pretty much involved in that whole process.
Mhm.
So Roland,
Yeah.
what is your view on next steps? I mean, there has to be engagement between some group of delegates from this commission and the superintendent. I mean, Carol, Roland, are you both willing to do that, to pull the string of the conversations you've had with Takis and Tanya and take it to that next step with the superintendent of schools?
Yeah,
I'd be willing to do that.
I absolutely am. And Helen and Roland, to your point, also, I did work for the Department of Defense Education Activity for 7 years, where I was employee relations specialist and EEO specialist. And we had no problem covering our teachers for EEO. So I found it a little bit surprising that just because there was a collective bargaining agreement, that there would be an impact, because our educators were all under various collective. We had 3 unions that we worked with at DODEA. They were all under various CBAs, and that did not prevent anyone from filing an EEO complaint. So I understand that there might be concern that there might have to be language added to let people know that they're covered by EEO, but I don't know how that would require massive changes in CBA. I think it's a good idea to talk to the superintendent, because he also was a human rights commissioner, so he would also have great insight into how it worked in Alexandria. So I'm very interested in speaking to him on that point also. But I do want to point out that I'm a little bit concerned that it seems pushing our ordinance forward would be based on whether or not managers wanted their employees to be covered, because managers are not inclined to say, yes, I want to have another avenue of pursuit for my employees. So I think it's a right that the employees should have. And so, whatever we can do. Stephen, are you stretching, or is that your hand raised?
That's my hand raised when you're done.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna stop talking now, because I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this also, Steve.
Is everybody just overlooking the 20,000 students at APS? I mean, who cares about the teachers? I care a little bit, but I mostly care about the 20,000 students that have no avenue for relief. That has nothing to do with collective bargaining.
Agreed.
And I don't understand how our elected officials cannot understand that. Completely irrelevant.
Can you join this delegation too, Stephen, and make that point?
I'm happy to join the
superintendent?
delegation. I am not the most politically correct individual to be talking to these folks. I have a very low tolerance for their bullshit.
Well, maybe they need to hear it.
I'm happy to
Maybe
come
they
along.
need to hear it, Stephen. But look, I think you're exactly right that all
Yes.
of this stuff on the CBA completely disregards the student coverage jurisdictionally. And Carol, I wildly agree with you that the point about whether or not schools opt in or don't opt in isn't dispositive of whether it's the right thing for this community to be doing for the protection of our students and teachers. I understood Christian's point earlier to be simply that to the extent schools were aligned and didn't object to it, that would facilitate a smoother process, I imagine, at the board level, right? And if that's something that we can gain through some elegant lobbying, then maybe that makes our exercise a little bit easier. So I still think it's worth a pass, right, to see if we can't do it. But can you three take the action, you know, in maybe January to try to tee up a meeting and make these points like we're not hearing you on CBA and it disregards the student population, Stephen's point, and see if we can't persuade to be a little bit more open to the possibility. And if not, then that's going to go into our letter and our recommendation to the board.
What are they really looking for? Are they looking for an okay from the schools before they do something to protect 20,000 students? That's the holdup?
I mean, that's what I heard Christian
I
say,
think
that
is,
there could
Stephen.
be a productive.
I think, Stephen, what they're looking at, and they being the county board, is they're looking at an approval or an okay from the school board to do that. And they're not going to get that because they're not going to give that to them. But that's not the question. The question is, what should be done for the good of the people of Arlington?
Well, no one on this call disputes that passing the ordinance as we've written it would be for the good of the people of Arlington. But the question is, you know, what's the county board going to do if they're not going to pass it? So do we have to go to the school board and convince them to tell the county board to do it? And if they say no, then the county board is just going to say, oh, well, the school board said no, so we can't do anything. Ah!
I think that's the whole point, Stephen, because we have the school board to deal with.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think at some point the Arlington board is the one that has to go fight with the school board, and that's a whole political issue that I don't think even the Human Rights Commission can delve into. I mean, I totally hear you, and the students are the #1 priority, but sadly, nobody's looking for the students.
Yeah, and I think the issue too that was raised by Tanya is the funding is separate. So I got the impression that as a former school board member, she was thinking that the county board doesn't necessarily have the authority to make those decisions for the school board, but I can't believe that would be the case. I can't believe that would be the case.
What's the funding issue? Not costing anybody anything.
That the county board doesn't have the authority to determine what the school board does.
Well, that's true. And the county board doesn't need the school board's authority or consent to do this if they would just do the right thing. But they won't until the school board says, okay, it's okay. We give you our permission, county board, go ahead. The county board, half the budget goes to the school board. The schools, they don't need their consent.
I agree.
I think you play the bad cop to Roland and Carol's good cop on the charm offensive, and we move the needle here, Stephen. I think the three of you are the dream team on this.
I'm always the bad cop. I love being the bad cop. It's the only role I know how to play.
Okay, very good. Do we have a path forward, and are you three happy to take this action with the superintendent?
Yes. Yeah, I am.
Okay, very good. Thank you all. And then Carol, I think you had another update and member report.
No, I just wanted to mention some of the other things. Even while I was in Africa, I did go to the Apartheid Museum and I went to the Human Rights Museum in Cape Town. So I just wanted to mention that in terms of things I'm doing, because I do think it's important, and I know we all do things every day in our lives to keep human rights and the importance of why we do these things in our forefront. So in the front of our mind. So certainly having the opportunity to visit those two museums really kind of revitalizes why we do what we do and why it's so important.
You're here. Thank you, Carol, for saying it. It's a good reminder. Okay, very good, Carol. Thank you. Anybody else on the line have an update in members' reports? Okay, at about 8, oh, I do. Wanda, over to you.
I'm sorry about that. Since this is my first meeting, I wasn't sure if this would be the time to bring up a question. I'm with NAACP Arlington. I think most of you all may know that. And the NAACP came to one of the Human Rights Commission's meeting last year. I think it was June of last year. And during that meeting, we were discussing the deaths in the jail. At that time, it was 7 deaths in 7 years. And one of the requests from, at the time, the third vice president, Michael Heminger, was if the Human Rights Commission would support NAACP by writing a letter supporting our efforts, or NAACP's efforts, to request an independent investigation from the Department of Justice. And I know there was discussion that we should have the former sheriff attend the meeting and hear from her. And I had the opportunity to listen to that recording as well. And after her remarks, I believe some of the reasons why the Human Rights Commission at the time decided not to sign on by writing a letter in support was because that the former sheriff had indicated that she was doing, had requested her own investigation, which is different from what the NAACP was requesting. She requested the National Institute of Corrections, and they deal with audits and providing technical services. NAACP was asking for patterns and practice to, in essence, hold the sheriff's office accountable for any civil rights violations. So fast forward, we've had 2 deaths. So it's now 9 deaths in 8 years, and with one that happened in August and one as recently as 2 days ago. And the Arlington County Sheriff and the NAACP is renewing that request for the Human Rights Commission to support NAACP in writing a letter requesting that the Department of Justice conducts an independent investigation.
Thank you, Wanda. And you're exactly right. That tracks with my recollection of our June meeting. And it's terrible to hear that there have been 2 subsequent deaths. If I recall correctly, I think our inclination after we heard from JD, who joined us and who gave the overview on the ask, was that we wanted to understand the full, to the extent we're asking for there to be a conclusion or a determination. I think this body felt it needed to have a review of the facts itself before it could sign on asking for that outcome, right? As opposed to just espousing what NAACP had uncovered. My recommendation here, acknowledging that this is my last few moments in the seats to defer to others on this call, but my recommendation here, in light of the 2 recent events, is that we look to put somebody from NAACP on our docket in January, as soon as possible, to get a readout and get clarity on what the renewed request is with precision. Not to say you haven't said it precisely, you have, but more detailed precision, right? And then consider whether we bring the sheriff back in. I mean, we only met him 2 days after he was sworn in, right? Although he had been in the deputy role for some time, but perhaps we bring the sheriff in February and ask him to do the work to be prepared to speak to this, so that the commission may then make an informed decision on whether it would like to sign up to the request for there to be a DOJ independent investigation or not, right? But I think that's something that, this body needs full facts and information to make an informed decision on. That's my take. I'll open up to others to see if folks have different views.
I think that we should have somebody from the NAACP come and talk to us directly and proceed with their request, as we always have in previous times, unless I'm wrong.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's what I'm proposing we would do for January.
And can I just also add that these 2 deaths did occur under the new sheriff. And I also believe that as a result of the Department of the National Institute of Corrections, the audit that they were spearheading, I don't believe that they provided a report as they indicated that they would. I think when I listened to the recording that the former sheriff said that it was going to be made public, that it was foilable, and I was just checking to see if anyone from the Human Rights Commission received that audit.
I don't believe we received a copy of it. Does anybody else on the line have a different, or Gurjeet or Anna, did you all receive a copy of that directly from Beth Arthur?
I haven't, no, I have no knowledge of that. No.
Okay.
I didn't receive anything.
Helen, this is Roland.
Yeah, please go ahead, Roland.
Yeah, my my understanding from that meeting that we had with the sheriff, Wanda, was that she made it very clear, one, that she was going to follow whatever recommendations was coming from that particular entity that was going to do that audit, and 2, she was going to make it public. That is, whatever was the report, it's going to make it public. So now I think what we're finding out is there wasn't, are we finding out that there wasn't really a report that was given to the sheriff's office, or there was a report that was given to the sheriff's office and it wasn't made public? Which one do you think it is, Wanda?
I think that the current sheriff, I believe at the last meeting indicated that there was a report, and then I just suppose that it just wasn't made public. But I think he did say that there was a report and it wasn't made public. I know he spoke a lot about, or maybe the prior sheriff spoke of having this quality insurance person that they hired to review the medical contracts. That person has subsequently resigned a little over a year being appointed to the position. I won't go into specific details of why, because it's, third party, but a little over a year, she's no longer there. There are concerns. I know we had NAACP on last year. They made the pitch, had the sheriff on. She made her pitch, which I would have to say that the National Institute of Corrections audit is completely different than what the NAACP was asking for. But if we have to go through this process again, we've already had 2 deaths. We're trying to prevent any additional deaths and wasting any additional time. But I understand the process, and that means we have to wait until January and then February.
Yeah, you made a very good point that I didn't know, which was that the Institute's audit was something that would be entirely different from the audit that was requested by the NAACP. I think that wasn't, well, I know that wasn't made known to us pretty much at the meeting, because if that was, then we may not have decided to wait until that report. If we knew that the report really wasn't going to deal with any of the issues that was raised by the NAACP. So.
Yeah, I agree with you, Roland. I think we left that meeting understanding, or at least mistakenly understanding, that what Beth Arthur was saying they were doing was consistent with what we thought the NAACP was asking us to support that they were doing. So it felt like a bit of a moot point, we thought, after that. I think it was that June or July, whenever, last year. Look, I mean, I hear you, Wanda, in terms of time is of the essence on this, for sure. I have not refreshed my own recollection on precisely what the ask was from NAACP. I don't feel like I have complete facts to be able to vote on it without getting my arms around it. I understand that's less than ideal in putting a delay on it, but I personally would feel more comfortable just having better clarity on what's happened, what are we asking for, What has been the response? What's the nexus for the HRC to weigh in? How does it dovetail with our purview and the work that we're doing? And I just think I personally would need a little bit more of clarity around it, but understand the ask and support it conceptually, of course.
Okay.
Do others have a different view? I'm but one voice on this commission, and I certainly want others to weigh in.
No, I tend to agree with Helen.
Roland, do you have your hand up?
Well, I previously, let me take it down. I'm just wondering if we have the NAACP to come and speak, would they add anything new other than there have been two more deaths? I guess what I'm trying to say is, do we really have to talk to the NAACP first, or should we really be scheduling the sheriff's office to respond? Because we know what the NAACP's position was, and we saw the letter. Everyone got a copy of the letter that the NAACP sent to the Justice Department, but we really don't know what the sheriff's office did in response to that. They told us they were going to do something, but they haven't. But clearly, we don't know what they've done. So I'm just wondering if whether or not we should be calling in the sheriff's office and say to them, "What have you done?" Because you said you were going to do something, and something did occur. That which occurred, which was the inspectors that audit report, but you haven't done anything.
Yeah, that makes good sense to me, Roland. I'm aligned there. Wanda, is there a new ask that NAACP is making? Is there a new letter that NAACP is sending in light of the two recent deaths? And if so, could you provide us with a copy of it in advance of January? And then Gurjeet and Anna, assuming that the majority of the commissioners sort of agree with Roland's proposal, I certainly do. Could you tee up an invitation to the sheriff to come and speak to us and be prepared to address this issue?
What are you talking about, January or February? What month?
I think in January.
Okay, we can ask. Yep.
Stefan?
So I think it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg for me. Clearly these deaths are appalling, but I guess I wonder whether we have jurisdiction to do anything to speak out. If we do have the jurisdiction and the will, then I guess we should be prepared to, say something. Like, I'm not sure that there's, and we didn't really say very much in June of 22 or whatever. Like, I'm not sure what point there is to have the sheriff back. Maybe we'll get some more facts. I kind of doubt it, but maybe we will. But it's only a point to have them if we're prepared to say this is a bad situation. Maybe here's our recommendations, and I think Wanda could probably provide some specific recommendations for us. But like we think that we have a role here out pretty clearly and definitively to say this is bad, this needs to stop, and here's some specific recommendations.
I'm not entirely sure, Stefan, and that's part of my hesitation, because I feel like I personally need to bone up on what is the dovetail to our ordinance and our jurisdiction here, and what is it that we can opine on or make recommendations around, right? Conceptually, it seems to fit, but I would want to spend a few more minutes kind of thinking about that carefully. And I think the question, my view, I think Roland makes a good point that having the sheriff speak to what's happening could be instructive or informative, because if the ask is do an investigation, a DOJ investigation, not a Department of Corrections, whatever that other entity Wanda was, but I'm misstating it, but that other entity investigation will look into these things. I want to understand what the sheriff is doing now And I want to understand what they haven't done that they represented to us a year and a half ago that they were going to be doing, so that we can fashion, to the extent we have the jurisdictional hook, very precise recommendations around what we're signing up to. Again, that's just my view of it.
But we need to figure out the policy. Like, say he gives us, something incredible that we say, oh, that's terrible. Are we gonna speak out and make recommendations? Do we have the hook? I think we need to figure out that first before getting this specific factual information or ambiguity, which is what I expect we would get from the sheriff. Like, if we're not going to do anything because we think we don't have enough of a hook, we shouldn't necessarily invite him. And if we think we do have the something to be we could have something to say, then we invite them and then respond appropriately. But I think we need to figure that out first.
I think that's a really fair point, Stefan. The only thought I have is, and Wanda, appreciate that you wear two hats, right? You're a commissioner, but you also are secretary of the NAACP. I think your request made just now, you're wearing your NAACP hat in saying the NAACP.
Well, she has a third hat, though, I think.
Yeah, what's the third?
Well, her prior role with the sheriff's office.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. But I think the ask, right, through Wanda this evening is coming to us from the NAACP. So that's an indication that the NAACP believes that there is a jurisdictional hook within our purview, right? I think we could, in the spirit of fact finding, get a read from both parties as to how they view our role as the HRC as having a voice or a say in this issue. I think you're exactly right, Stefan. We need to all get aligned in our perspective of it, but the ask has come to us, presumably because there's an NAACP view that we do have a role and a seat at this table.
Roland, do you have a viewpoint on where kind of policy-wise we should fall on this?
Not off the cuff right now. I don't. I need to go back and really carefully look at it and think about it.
Yeah.
No, I was asking Roland.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, I think my recollection of the statute, and I have to go back and read the statute again, is that it deals with quality of life in Arlington. And I think this is part of that. And it may not be something specific where you find that they violated this, but it may be a situation in which the commission says, this is something that's wrong in Arlington. It deals with people who are here in Arlington, and this is what we think you should do in order to try to rectify it, or we think you ought to look at it, or we agree with the Arlington NAACP in their attempt to get some sort of resolution, certainly their attempt to get someone to pretty much investigate it, to look at the whole thing. So it's more like that, Stephen, as opposed to any finding, like you would do it with a regularly filed case. I think you have to go back and look at the statute. I think if you go back and look at the first 2 or 3 sections of the statute, you will see that it gives the commission, the human rights statute deals with a quality of life pretty much in Arlington. And I think that's what we're talking about here. I could be wrong.
Also, Helen, don't we have to go with the assumption that the new sheriff got all that information from the prior sheriff and that the new sheriff got that report?
I don't know. I think that would be subject to sort of Roland's proposal on what we would learn or ascertain with bringing the sheriff in.
Exactly.
Helen, I just want to make one point. Information. I believe I read in the paper that this latest death was being criminally investigated. I just want to point that out.
Carol, you broke up a little bit there.
I'm sorry, did I break up? I'm sorry.
You did. Are you saying
there was the point?
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
It's my understanding. I thought I read online that this latest death they were looking into it in a criminal investigation. And I may be wrong, but I thought I read that. And I think we should be clear on that before we ask the sheriff to come, only because his response will be, that's a matter of criminal investigation right now. And I don't know that we're going to be further ahead. So I think we just need to get some clarification on that. And I don't know if that's something we could do tonight, or if we just want to tentatively invite him to the meeting pending a determination on that. Because I just know that if it's a criminal investigation, the response is going to be, I can't speak to that.
Thank you. So look, in terms of next steps, Stefan, can you take the action of taking a look at the ordinance as it exists today without our proposals, which haven't obviously been accepted, and developing a point of view on where you think our intersection is here, and maybe providing a readout to the commission? And then Gurjeet and Anna, from your perspective, when would be the last moment where we would need to tender an invitation to the sheriff in order to bring them in January?
I mean, I think it's nice to at least give him 2 weeks notice if we can.
Okay.
So it'd be nice to know in December at some point, just because of the holidays and his schedule, you know, so he allows. So if you can let me know sometime in December, I can shoot it out.
Okay. And Stefan, if just so I'm clear on sort of your thinking here, if you don't think that we have a jurisdictional hook, is it your view that it's futile to invite the sheriff for January?
If we're not prepared to do anything if we find the situation of concern, which I think we do, and we think that we have a hook, and we're not prepared to speak out against it, then we shouldn't invite him. But I think we can probably figure out that there is a hook within the statute. It's just that we don't have a clear track record of speaking out against these kinds of things when they emerge.
Well, I think last year we were of the mistaken view that there already was an investigation underway, right? So I don't know that I've had a point of view that we have seen something, believed that the existing reaction is insufficient, believed we had a jurisdictional hook and didn't say anything, right? I don't know that we have that track record. I don't know what our point of view collectively as a body is going to be once we hear from the sheriff. But if we think we have a jurisdictional hook, we think that there is an issue within our purview, we think that an investigation would be appropriate, I could certainly see a world in which collectively this body votes to take some sort of action and pick up the pen on some sort of letter. I'm not in a position to make that conclusion right now. Others might be, I'm not, so I would abstain from that vote, but others are welcome to make the motion.
I also think that if we are going to issue the invitation, that maybe we should provide him with 5 or 6 questions that optimally we'd like him to respond to.
I agree. Would somebody
the meeting?
Yeah, do you want to take the pen on those questions, or maybe you and Wanda could work together on those questions?
I think Wanda has an idea of what we would want to ask him, maybe, but happy to work with her.
Thank you both.
Wanda, yeah, can I just say, in terms of, I believe the former sheriff called it an investigation, but it was with the National Institute of Corrections, and I believe they did go to the sheriff's office and conduct their audit. That's the difference. I believe they were there and did an audit and provided technical services, or whatever the National Institute of Correction does. They specialize in services for correctional facilities. And we're not looking for this audit. We're looking for an investigation, so that if there are any civil rights pattern practices violations, that the sheriff's office will be held accountable. And I can give an example from this perspective. The sheriff's office was sued in previous years by a former person incarcerated for violating their ADA rights, American with Disability Act rights, and the Department of Justice, they held the sheriff's office under this umbrella for, I think it was for 3 years, found that they did violate this person's rights, and that the sheriff's office had to meet certain criteria, had to do certain things for this umbrella of 3 years. So it's holding them accountable and changing, the practice that had occurred. So we're looking for something broader than just an audit and providing, specialized services. We're looking for accountability and changes.
I appreciate that, Wanda, and that's a distinction that wasn't crisp for me a year ago, but I super found that super clear as you parsed it, and I appreciate that. So what do folks want to do? Is there a motion on the table for what we do here? Or have we sort of reached a consensus that Wanda and Stefan are going to prepare questions, confirm the jurisdictional hook, and we'll tender an invitation in late December, early January to the sheriff? Are we aligned there?
I second what you just said.
Okay, very good. I'm not going to be in the seat in January, right? So I want to make sure that this body is happy with what you're all deciding tonight. Okay, very good. So Gurjeet and Anna, can you push out the invitation to the sheriff once we get those list of questions from Wanda and Stefan? We'd like the sheriff to come to our meeting in January. And Wanda and Stefan, thank you both for working on the questions and the jurisdictional hook. If you want to circulate that to the group beforehand, we're all happy to take a look. We'll be careful not to create a meeting with our emails, but we'll take a look. Does anybody have anything else before we adjourn?
Helen, just to be devil's advocate, what do we do if he declines? Do we do it for February? I mean, he could be busy.
He certainly could be. I would suggest we try to get it as soon as possible thereafter. And I would impress upon Gurjeet and Anna to express the importance of this to the commission.
And he could be busy, but we're talking about people dying in his jail, so hopefully he would make that a priority.
Yep.
Ellen, how many people on an email constitute the meeting?
I think it's the reply all issue that looks like a real conversation. So if
How many for the reply all?
I thought it was 3 or more.
I think it's 3.
That's correct. It's 3 or more.
So how can Roland, Carol, and I communicate about the lobbying without creating a meeting by email?
You have to wait like an hour or 2 hours, Steve.
I'll just circulate a conference call number. Maybe that'll work. I mean,
Very good. Okay, folks, 8:45. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Happy holidays, everyone. See y'all in January.
Yes, happy New
thank you for your
holidays.
effort as a chair. Great job,
Year.
chair.
Helen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.